yo, homies. Me think we should think something that will make youth like, yes, queen. What youth likes, huh? Like lids. Baby, come to closer at the back seat of my Rover. What do you think, bitches?
I'm not going to pretend for a second that writing AIB quality work is easy. It takes skills and a really intelligent sense of humor to produce such high quality videos in a country where husband-wife jokes are the gold standard.
Why are husband and wife always fighting?
But in this video, I'll try and break down the thought process behind some of AIB's most popular videos. The work that AIB did seemed to be heavily inspired by American comedy sketches, but their genius comes into play when they work these concepts to fit the Indian experience. Their take on issues common to most Indians is unique in its execution in a bunch of different ways. The first is structure. Let's look at the structure of honest Indian weddings or honest flights. Before getting into the writing of the actual comedic sketch, the writers would have to lay out everything that actually happens during a typical Indian wedding or on a flight. It's about picking up the smaller things like discussions with the caterer or the experience of having wedding pictures taken. Once you know what happens in reality, the next step is reading between the lines. And it's not just about what the characters are actually thinking, but also the reality of a situation that would otherwise be hidden under a guise of politeness.
तब तक हम तय कर लेते हैं दहेज कैसे देना है, नेट बैंकिंग, COD.
देखिए भाई साहब, हम तो बड़े प्रोग्रेसिव लोग हैं, हमें तो बिटकॉइन भी चलेगा.
But this is a simplified version of the structure. The actual writing begins from posing the premise as a question. In fact, the point isn't to find answers, but to flip the question on its head. For example, a redundant question would be, why do people in India take offense? A good response to that would be, why are you so surprised by it? The majority of India gets easily offended, and that is nothing new. And that means that those who don't get offended are the outliers. And so, AIB brings it down to the question, who are these people who don't get offended? Now that free speech has been identified as the problem, ironically, the news which would in any other scenario report on growing intolerance, instead reports on those who aren't intolerant. Another example, why are relationships so complicated these days? The answer, people want their actual relationships to be as perfect as their imagined relationships, as they seem to be in the virtual world. In other words, a long-distance relationship that exists only virtually feels better than a so-called close-distance relationship.
बोलो हाय बोलो.
हाय.
देखा, रियल लाइफ में कुछ नहीं होता, पर जब तुम मुझे रैंडमली टेक्स्ट करते हो ना हाय, तब फोन नहीं बजता. शाहरुख खान खुद आके वायलिन बजाता है, ऐसी फील आती है.
Now that's one way to create a premise. But to add to a premise of any sort and elevate it to a great comedic sketch, AIB used exaggeration and escalation. This is commonly seen in a lot of Key and Peele sketches, but AIB uses it perfectly in the Indian context. Now consider this point they are making. All the food at a wedding looks the same, some kind of orange gravy, but how do you show it comically? By comparing it to movies with a million sequels that all feel the same.
Sir, this is veg in orange gravy, non-veg in orange gravy, some other shit in orange gravy. Orange gravy returns, the revenge of the orange gravy, lage raho orange gravy, rice and Muslim rice.
Another scenario is when you're ordering food. Everyone says they don't want anything, but the moment you're placing the order, everyone wants something. Here, the situation escalates.
एक पप्पा के लिए खिचड़ी दे देना,
2 पापड़,
1 किलो केचप,
छोले मसाला,
4 कद्दू,
पपीज के आंसू,
बड़ा चिकन चाहिए, ऐसे खाने वाला.
4, 10, 11, एक वो
सुरमा मुझे बहुत
बाद में टिक्का बोल.
यूरिन टेस्ट शेक करके ना
टिक्का.
The same happens with the phrase paneer samajh ke kha ja, as the non-vegetarian friend finds more and more obscure ways to explain why his vegetarian friend should pretend meat is just paneer and eat it.
स्विट्जरलैंड में पता है क्या होता है? हाँ, स्विट्जरलैंड में चीज से पनीर. स्विट्जरलैंड में हसीन वादियां मिलता है. हसीन वादियां. और क्या होता है इंडिया में? कश्मीर में कौन सी पिक्चर बनी थी? कश्मीर की कली. उसमें कौन था? शमी कपूर का कंटेम्पररी कौन है? जितेंद्र की बेटी कौन है? एकता कपूर ने कौन सी पिक्चर बनाई थी? कृष्णा कॉटेज. और क्या होता है पता है? कॉटेज चीज को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं पता है? पनीर. तो पनीर समझ के खा जा।
Another great example is the way mass recruiters recruit every last person at a college placement. Here, the process is exaggerated, portraying the students as dehumanized vegetables that get bought and transported in the back of a truck. But at the end of the day, it all depends on the Indian context. And the perfect way to work with this context is by using language as a comedic tool. One way that AIB did that is by making the characters say what they would never say in real life. For example, think of Alia Bhatt, a privileged anglicized star kid, saying this.
पूरी दुनिया मुझ पे ऐसे चढ़ गई जैसे अतरिया पे लूटन कबूतर.
Or Rohan Joshi, the Bombay-bred English-speaking consumer of American culture, saying this.
वो सुई मलमल से गुजरती है तो मेरे अंग अंग में क्यों.
Or a sweet Parsi auntie on a flight saying this. Another way they use language is by verbalizing thoughts that Indians often have but never say out loud.
कैलकुलेटर यूज कर रहे हो तो ठीक ही होगा.
And then there are those things that Indians will always say no matter what they are going through.
भाई कब आएगा टीवी पे?
My favorite play on words is this line from their demonetization video, which is a reference to a certain famous ex-chai wala.
ये कालाधन हटाना ही था, तो ये पार्टी की फंडिंग पे आरटीआई लागू क्यों नहीं कर सकते?
तो चाय बेच ना, पॉलिटिक्स में क्यों घुस रहा है?
Another important part of this writing process is the writing of visuals. A bad writer forgets that everything present in the scene is a tool that has to be incorporated in the story. While a lot of people will emphasize on the show rather than tell aspect of storytelling, AIB would often flip this concept and use words instead of pictures. These words would intelligently introduce a familiar idea and create a visual in our heads, hence making the situation even more comical. So these are some of the tools that AIB used in most of their skits. But one particular sketch stands out to me as some of their finest work, the day India resigned. Consider the basis of the sketch, the British leaving India. Now their approach to this separation is interesting because besides the oppressed winning their freedom from the oppressor, the separation was also the end of an economic relationship that was full of exploitation. If you think about it, it does sound like a dead-end job which leaves the employee feeling exploited. Hence, the skit is an exit interview. But leaving a job is never a simple transactional process. There are always emotions involved. In other words, quitting a job is a lot like having a breakup. Britain too had an emotional reaction to losing India, its crown jewel.
I didn't know you were gonna go away from my life.
This sketch also does a stunning job with its visual motifs. The script is filled with crisp references to moments from the British rule. For example, this moment is a reference to the British crediting themselves with bringing the railways to India.
A shiny English train. Does India want the shiny train?
Then there's the Jallianwala Bagh massacre.
What if, hypothetically, they were peacefully protesting suspension of civil rights with women and children in a garden with no exits?
Yes.
Really?
No.
And the Dandi March.
आंसू जैसा टेस्ट है तेरे खाने का, पर एटलीस्ट आंसू में नमक होता है, तेरे खाने में तो वो भी नहीं है.
Again with the salt, always with the salt.
My absolute favorite line from this sketch is the reference to the Portuguese occupation of Goa, like a partner cheating with someone else.
Oh, then it's Portugal then. You told me Goa was a one-time thing.
What stands out the most is this speech by India, where he lists everything that the British did that he will never do to his citizens. And as he does that, we realize that he's listing things that are literally happening in the country right now. At the end, the skit reminds us that we ourselves have a lot of similarities with the British Empire. And at the end of the day, the British left us with many things, good and bad, even as they drained our resources to the core. And that's the magic of a well-written sketch that makes AIB's work stand out among the gazillion other skits on YouTube. Here's hoping this level of writing and execution will return one day to this democratic platform.